Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this Auvik IT Nation Connect pre-day event. Better Together, an integrated approach to greater network visibility and faster MTTR. We're actually going to take this session to discover really how Auvik integrates with ConnectWise to really give you true network visibility and control, right? So we want to give you control from one centralized view, and it's really been designed to streamline your workflows and help you close tickets faster, so really you can focus on scaling your business profitably. You know, network management really shouldn't be an unmanageable or unprofitable task. So my name is Houston Parks. As Caitlin said, I'm a senior sales engineer here. No matter the title, I do a lot of things, but I'm really excited to be here. I started with ConnectWise actually, gosh, over 6 years ago as a member of our partner support team. And that's really kind of where I cut my teeth and really began my journey with working with MSPs, ITSPs, organizations like yourselves. And I really quickly became infatuated with helping our partners use our platforms to successfully run their businesses. So it was really a natural move for me to join the sales engineering team and talk about how we can enable our tools to achieve your business goals. So my core competencies span the ConnectWise suite of products, third-party integrations like Auvik, and much more. And really, while no day is ever the same, I've really had the distinct pleasure of working alongside the ConnectWise and Auvik teams in both a sales and strategy capacity. So I'm really excited to join Steve today. Steve Petryschuk, he's one of the smartest guys in the room at Auvik, and I think we have a really fantastic presentation. So Steve, pass it off to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Houston. And for those who don't know me, my name is Steve Petryschuk. I've been with Auvik for nearly 5 years now, spent a lot of time working with IT service providers like yourselves. And before I was with Auvik, I actually spent some time in an IT security reseller space. So definitely familiar with some of the struggles of trying to manage networks, both from a security and an operations side. Basically anything that comes down to product integrations, how do I make Auvik work in certain situations, transforming it from just a tool to actually something that is integrated within your standard processes is something that I sort of I'm really passionate about. So I've done a few of these kind of sessions before, and I'm excited that Houston and I actually get to do a presentation together for the first time. So this is a big win for us. We're pretty excited. So you'll see us going back a little bit back and forth throughout the presentation. I know Caitlin mentioned it at the beginning, but there is a chat section as well as an ask a question section within Crowdcast here. Please use those, interact with us. We'd love to sort of hear your questions as they come up. So let's dive in. This is probably something that a lot of folks on the call can relate to. Network issues, right? They can really be a pain to troubleshoot, and that's what we're really going to focus on today. But I'm going to sort of challenge us and say, they don't have to be a pain to troubleshoot. They don't have to be like, that old network is slow. Oh my God, it's going to take me forever to figure out what's going on. We're going to talk about some steps that you can take to help your team accelerate network troubleshooting. We'll focus specifically on some tools that are already in your tool belt. Obviously, it's ConnectWise and Auvik here on the call, so it'll be focusing around your PSA, ConnectWise, your NMS Auvik, and your Endpoint RMM. And we'll look at how you can build some workflows around these tools to help you streamline that mean time to resolution on network issues.
Yeah, and if I could just add one thing really quickly, no matter the tool you're using, I think you can take a lot of this information away to really just take a more holistic approach to your business and how you take the tools that you have and streamline them in a way that you can take really complex tasks or tasks that you think maybe you couldn't assign to maybe an L1 or an L2, but really kind of dig down and use the automation of the tools to get those assigned to those resources to begin triaging and those, the initial service delivery steps. So I'm really excited to be here as well, Steve. So looking forward to this.
Cool. So a little bit of, I guess, a prelude to what we'll sort of jump into next. And it's that whole idea of, and we'll sort of use this to set the stage as we get more into the practical stuff as the session goes on here. But you've probably heard of like the people, process, tools triad before, right? It's nothing new. Troubleshooting network issues can be a pain if you don't have the right tools. Troubleshooting network issues can be a real challenge if you don't have the right process. And I'm not going to get into the people side because that's beyond the scope of this presentation. But obviously there's a people aspect here. So that's what we're going to focus on, how we can take these tools that we have, put some process around it to enable our people to really kickstart those network troubleshooting. So let's start with tools. I imagine your tool stack looks something like this, and I want to thank an Auvik partner who shared a diagram similar to this with us that sort of highlighted all the different tools that they have in their stack. And I would reflect for a second on your business, right? How many tools does your team use on a daily basis or on a monthly basis? I'm willing to bet it's a lot. I think there's 9 or 10 in this diagram. There's probably a couple that are not included in that as well. And each one of these tools is important in its own right? They each serve a purpose. Each is important, but it can easily get complicated when we have too many tools, right? I always like to say, and I do a lot of home renovation work, and I'm always upset when I don't have the right tool for the job, because if I have the right tool, it's really, really quick and easy to solve that problem. But sometimes if you have too many tools, you're not sure which one to use. And if they're not integrated properly, not talking properly, it can be a real challenge to figure out what tool to use where. And so that's why we're going to focus a little bit today on integrating, right? So how do we integrate these tools to get the most out of each one?
Agreed. Awesome.
Cool. Anything else you want to add there, Houston?
Nope, we're good.
All right. So, and that's where sort of the next step comes in, right? The tools are well, they may be useful in their own rights. To really get the most out of each tool, I want to make sure that I have well-defined processes that drive effective use of each tool, right? So I know that as I'm working through any sort of task, I have this set of tools. I need to make sure that my team knows what tool to use when and how to use that tool when they do get into that sort of spot. So this is where that well-defined process on how to use tools really comes in. And that's where we'll start talking about standard operating procedures a bit. So if you joined Auvik at our Franklin MSP Live event back in January, or you've been through a couple of our planning summits through Q2, you may have heard me talking a little bit about SOPs already. But basically, for those that aren't familiar, SOPs are a written step-by-step instructions that describe how to perform a routine activity. And they can be used across industries, like accounting procedures, quoting procedures, like what do you do when you put together an accurate quote for a client, or a personnel procedure, right? An onboarding checklist or an offboarding checklist. We're going to frame our discussion around a specific SOP for troubleshooting network issues. And some people might be saying, well, I've troubleshoot network issues all the time in the past. It's anything but standard. It's always something different at the end, always a different problem. I would challenge that a bit, because ultimately we all follow the same troubleshooting steps as we go. So we should formalize that, document that, determine which tool is best to use at which stage of that process, so we can frame this as a standard operating procedure and share with the rest of our team. So remember that SOPs aren't about a tool, right? They're not sort of a, hey, here's how you use ConnectWise, or hey, here's how you use Auvik. They're directions for performing that activity. In our case, that's network troubleshooting. So tools become an integral part of that process, and that's why we're going to highlight Auvik and ConnectWise as part of it. But as Houston alluded to earlier, if you're not currently using one of those tools, think about how you can reflect on your own business and determine how you can use your tools in your tool stack to develop this well-defined process for troubleshooting networks with the tools that you have.
And I want to reiterate here, there may be some folks on the call that might be smaller shops that think I'm too busy, I'm too small, we're too frantic, I don't have time to do that. That might be the case right now, but that might not be the case in the future. So I want to echo Steve's points on the importance of SOPs. Again, not how to use ConnectWise, not how to use Automate, but how to solve a specific purpose. And something that we're going to talk a bit more near the end of the presentation is how you can use functions within ConnectWise Manage to automate some of those directions. But when we think about standard operating procedures, it's important to believe in them and use them within your organization, because they can really help build consistency and accountability. One of the stories I always tell when I talk about when I do my ConnectWise demonstrations is we want to talk about the accountability within a ticket. We want to talk about the consistency across your team. These are individuals that might be going on vacation, might choose to no longer work for you anymore, and that knowledge that they have, while it's great, it leaves with them, right? So you want to kind of notate that, you want to log the information, you want to use that and build it into your processes, so that way that customer that you're working with has that same experience with Houston as he does with Steve, vice versa, that we're really kind of building those really kind of sticky customer service experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've mentioned it a couple times, but just to sort of bring everyone back together, what we're going to focus on for the next little bit is specifically that center part of that chart that I was showing earlier, how we can streamline some of our processes and make sure that our tools are integrated from the ConnectWise Manage, Auvik, and ConnectWise Automate suite. And we'll sort of focus on those three tools and how you can build out a workflow that leverages those so you can best troubleshoot network type issues. All right, so let's dive in. Who's ready? And a reminder as we jump in here, if there's questions along the way, feel free to jump in. If I see them and they're contextual to what we're talking about, I'll answer them right away. But if it's sort of something that is a little bit of an aside, we'll sort of wrap them up at the end. But if you do have any questions, please drop them in. So step number one.
Awesome. Well, you know, my name being Houston, I couldn't do a presentation without talking about, space or, having liftoff, right? We've got that great foundation of manage. We have that ticket now. We're ready to begin to work. The eagle has landed. So when tickets arrive in ConnectWise Manage, in many cases, they're going to be coming from your integrations. And that's why an integration with Auvik is so key here, right? So my alert that the high CPU utilization has been detected on my lab switch there, right, is inside of my service board. My agreement automatically was tagged against that ticket. My SLA status, which is driven from my agreement, is also on that ticket. So we're using workflow rules in the back end to kind of flag when we're getting close to breaching that SLA. We want to make sure that we're maintaining that. As we open up that ticket, we're getting some really great information about that end user. Maybe they're a VIP contact. Maybe this is someone that we want to provide an extra level of support to, or maybe someone that's thinking about leaving us. We want to be aware of that, so we're going to have that information built right into the ticket with that nice bright orange line. Top right-hand corner there, looking at the service ticket itself, I get immediate information about that endpoint. So when we're ready to actually jump onto that device itself, I can click my my link inside of my discussion tab of my notes area within the notes pod. Or if I wanted to take a quick look back at the historical information on that ticket, I've got my service tab on the config itself. By the way, that config automatically associates itself with the ticket like your RMM does. So that way, if we want to pull reports later, if we want to look at just a kind of a trending behavior of this particular device, I've got that service tab right there that kind of gives me all the information in one screen. So again, a lot of great information right there for us, easy to get within just a few clicks.
It's all about context, right? So it's starting off with a whole bunch of context. It's not just an alert that lands in my inbox. I have all this information about the device, about service agreements. It's all that context. And then jumping into, once you've received this alert, you've sort of built out some of that immediate context in your head. The next step we're going to do is dive into Auvik using this link that's right here within the service board ticket, or within the ticket, sorry. And what that's going to do is that's going to start to drive me directly into the Auvik dashboard, onto the device dashboard that is being affected. And first thing that I'm going to do now as a technician when I look at this is I'm going to use the map for additional context about the network. So I got some information from Manage on, what the historical tickets may have looked like and what additional asset information. But I'm going to start to use the map to help me identify who's affected, what devices might be impacted. If it's, as an example, a core switch within my network, I could have a ton of users impacted, or if it's a downstream AP that's impacted, maybe only a handful of users. So I can immediately understand that context. I don't need to know offhand or look at other documentation for understanding how people are connected. It's this, when I get that service ticket, the device is affected, I can tell, well, it looks like John, the CEO, is being impacted. This is now a high priority, right? So I can really use a lot of context, or use the map for a lot of context on the issue. And every troubleshooting SOP in my mind in Auvik should start off with this map. I use it all the time when I'm troubleshooting our network issues within our lab and whatnot. So next, I'm going to dive into some device details. We got that alert. In this case, we're sort of framing this discussion around a high CPU utilization alert, but really it could be any alert type. And I'm going to get a whole bunch more information about the device on that device dashboard. So in the case of a high CPU utilization, I want to see, is the throughput on the switch also increasing? So is it just a matter of more traffic, higher CPU? Makes sense. or it could be a rogue process. And here I'm just sort of running through what all the different options could be, but I'm going to use that device dashboard to understand, well, is there a traffic pattern here that is abnormal? Is there a lot of packet discards, a lot of packet errors, something else on the device that may be causing that high stabilization to occur? So we'll get specific information on how that device and how the interfaces on that device are performing. And I can look at that, if it's just at a ticket that I've gotten immediately, I can look at it, just in this time period. Or if it's something that's, looking at some of that ticket history, if I've seen a similar issue on that asset, every Monday at 9 a.m. or every Friday night, I can look back at that performance stats within Auvik as well to see, when that device may have been impacted. Next, we'll make sort of the assumption that it was a traffic issue, that the traffic sort of was peaking. There was a lot of throughput in the network. So now I want to understand why that traffic is passing through. So if there's nothing wrong with the device itself, like it's still up and performing properly, but it's just a high traffic, I'm going to dive down and start to understand, what applications are in use. Are these applications business critical? Are these applications not business critical, right? Is it something like, a Dropbox that could go either way? But we want to start to understand not just that the bandwidth issue is sort of, or the bandwidth is through the roof, but then who is doing it, why they're doing it, and then start to make some critical business decisions on how we can resolve that issue, whether it's restrict application usage or increase bandwidth. But TrafficInsights will give us that visibility into then how the network is being used. Now, sort of what differentiates TrafficInsights here is that we're going to get more visibility into what applications are in use as opposed to just IPs and ports. So if there's any users on the call that have used TrafficInsights before, you sort of understand that the application traffic classification. It's kind of tough to read on this screen, but rather than showing me an IP address, it's classified, hey, these are all my media streaming apps, right? Here's the, the YouTube downloads, here's Netflix, and I can start to dive into those application categories, and really enables the L1 text to really troubleshoot those issues quicker by understanding what applications are in use and who's using them without having to know all the nitty-gritty details of NetFlow.
Yeah, I was going to ask. It seems like someone that doesn't necessarily have a steep, developed background in network troubleshooting could probably pretty easily look in here and discern the different types of network traffic that they're seeing at that endpoint. So,
yeah, I mean, I don't want to throw them quite under the bus, but the account managers at Auvik are pretty good at working through TrafficInsights, and they're able to see, what sorts of applications are going on and not much network experience at all. So I'll throw them under the bus a little bit. So, assuming that it's not a performance issue, that there's some issue with the device, or I haven't found anything on those bandwidth graphs or packet error graphs that tell me what's going on, I'm going to turn my attention to the logs on that device. So, in a traditional environment, there's a lot of logs being kept on that asset. A switch is going to log to a local log server, as will your firewall, and all those tell the story of exactly what's happening. Now we've sort of now bundled Syslog into Auvik, so now I'm able to get all of these logs from all of my network devices within one location. So if I got that ticket at, say 10:52, the time it is now, I can quickly drill into Auvik and look at all the logs that are occurring across all of my devices during that time period. So I'm not stuck going into 10 different potentially affected devices. I'm not stuck going searching line by line within a log file. I can quickly search based on device name, severity, and time to really accelerate finding that needle in the haystack, right? I would say the number of logs that you can get from devices still is a haystack. There's nothing that you're really going to do. That a lot of devices can be really noisy on the logs, but it's how we can search that quicker and easier to really find and narrow in on what I'm looking for in as little time as possible. And that's where some of the searching and filtering capabilities of Auvik help me accelerate that troubleshooting process.
Yeah, I was going to ask why should I enable it now? But it seems like that's a pretty crystal clear reason why, to be able to begin using those tools at your resource to isolate that data in a. I mean, gosh, even a wireless access point can generate what, hundreds of logs, probably more.
Throughout the course of the day, you can get into the thousands pretty quickly. Yep.
Yeah.
So we typically measure them on the thousands of logs scale.
Jeez.
Yeah. And so, I mean, so I guess if your question is, why should I enable it now when I haven't in the past? The one so every device keeps logs locally, right? The one advantage to enabling Syslog and to sort of taking them off the device is now I'm going to have that offline record. So if the device reboots and the log file is overwritten, I have a history of those logs. If the device isn't accessible, right? Maybe you've gotten an alert that whether it's gone offline or or you're trying to log into it and it's sort of frozen, not letting you in. If I have that offline copy of those logs that you've collected via Syslog, I now have access to all that information that I wouldn't have had before. So setting up Syslog, outside the scope of your network troubleshooting SOP, but definitely something you should look at within
Has a lot of
your
benefits,
networks.
for sure.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. So now we're at a point where maybe we're going to start making some changes. I understand that I pinpointed the problem to be a process on the device, and Syslog had identified that this process was sort of going crazy for whatever reason. I'm going to use the remote management capabilities within Auvik to dive into that device, to run a couple of quick commands, and whether it's restart the process, maybe I need to schedule a maintenance window and reboot the device. But using the in-app management capabilities, I'm able to really speed that along. I don't have to set up VPNs and jump servers and all that kind of stuff. And so we'll definitely be able to sort of help you access those devices quicker. All right. And then last, if it's not the network,
it's actually maybe the endpoint itself, or even maybe the user.
It's never the user, right? Never the user.
It's never it's never my fault.
Yeah.
But with that being said, to Steve's point, we searched through the haystack. We're looking through that needle, and if it gets to a point where we've ruled out all of the other pieces where Auvik kind of dominates, we're gonna look back at that endpoint and we're gonna look at our RMM, in this case, Automate. So from the computer management screen, which we can access from a ticket, from within Automate, we get a lot of easy to see information. I can easily spot potential issues such as a completely full hard drive. Maybe that particular endpoint is being bottlenecked by the lack of storage, or maybe low amounts of memory. Reviewing alerts on that endpoint, that's going to give us kind of the clarity and the forensics on what types of evidence that particular endpoint is experiencing that kind of will lead us further down that particular path. If we get to a point where maybe we just need to look at how the user is using the endpoint, I've got my control or my backstage functions at the top there, which allow me the ability to jump on that machine. I can perform in-depth troubleshooting, and I can even do that without ever interrupting the user. Now, there's a lot of awesome, cool functionality that you can get out of this. With the next few days, we're going to have a lot of great sessions with IT Connect that are focusing on a variety of different topics. So keep your eyes peeled there. A lot of folks are always wondering, well, how can I get more out of using ConnectWise Automate? There's even functions that we can use like command line functions, trace route commands, right? Maybe I want to execute those without actually interrupting that user. I can do all that right from my computer management screen without it ever interrupting that user or taking over their device.
Cool. Yeah. So if we take a step back now, we've got a ticket landed in manage. We've run through some network troubleshooting steps, determined it is or it isn't the network. After that, turn to the endpoint. And when we get to this point, hopefully our process is well enough that we're at that success moment, issue resolved. And I imagine as you guys start to work through your network troubleshooting SOPs, and this becomes a good starting point, right? We sort of talked about the basic steps that Houston and I, had put together based on our experiences talking to many partners like yourselves. But ultimately, you'll have your little tips or tools of the trade and little tips and tricks here and there that you want to build in to make sure that when you get to the end of your network troubleshooting SOP, that you get to the success moment, that issue is resolved, right? And ultimately, that this will be refined over time, so that at the end of the day, 9 times out of 10, you're resolving this issue. By the time you get to step, 7, 8, whatever that end is, and then all's good. Move on to the next ticket, right? And Matt Lee just said good morning in the chat, so good morning, Matt. Welcome.
This is not pre-recorded. We are live.
We are live. That's right. So let's shift focus a little bit. We talked a lot of generic stuff. We wanted to leave you guys with some tips that you could take and apply following today's session to really help you get the most out of this tool set. So let's dive into that. And that's where we'll focus on a few tips and tricks that we've picked up along the way to make sure that you're getting the most out of your Auvik ConnectWise integration.
Yeah. So just to reiterate, the steps that we followed were great, but they're only as good as the user who's following them, and they're only as great really as the data that goes in. And something that I always harp on a lot is and ConnectWise has had this thing for a very long time. It's not in ConnectWise it didn't happen. I truly believe that, because for the reporting, for the experience of not only your end user, but also your technicians, we want to make sure that we're putting really good data into manage. That way, we're going to get even better information out of it. So if you go to that next slide there, something I always want to talk about, especially as we're talking about SOPs, we want to be able to easily and effortlessly be alerted to specific events going on in our system, right? So, for that high CPU utilization ticket that we talked about, if that's just going into an email, that can easily be missed, especially if it's something that's a little bit more of a business interruption. We don't want to let that sit, and we don't even want to allow the end user to be the one that brings it to our attention. We want to be the ones that are proactively telling that customer, hey, we found this, we're investigating it, or an even better case, hey, we found this, we fixed it already, we just want to let you know about it. So how do we make sure that we are made aware of that? Well, within Auvik, severities are set with different types of alerts. So my second screenshot there shows me those severities with those different types of alerts. I can map those over into a service ticket. So based on how that ticket comes over, if that's a critical or a high alert, I want to make sure that our team is aware of that. So I'm going to use workflow rules to look for those specific types of priorities. So if those priorities are true, I want to go ahead and maybe move that ticket, say, from my traditional managed alerts board, where there may not be anyone managing that because just so much noise on that board. I'm going to move that ticket because it's in that custom new Auvik status, and the priority is in that priority 1 critical. I'm going to move that ticket over, and I'm even going to set a custom status and a type of that ticket. So remember, the types, subtypes, and items allow me to categorize my tickets. And based on those categorizations, we have a lot of flexibility there. Great for reporting and some other things that we're going to get into. But again, this takes an additional step, especially if maybe you have a service delivery team who's dispatching tickets or triaging tickets. I can take one step out of their day because I'm going to auto begin to categorize that ticket. So again, we want to be creative in how those alerts are being sent to manage, because again, as we're putting in that really good data, we're able to expedite the assignment process or even the remediation process.
Right, and it's important to know that none of these are static, right? So we look at, as an example, these critical alerts in the screenshot down below. I've seen a lot of partners that will customize some of these severities, customize their own alerts. They'll have multiple notification channels going into different service boards to help facilitate a lot of these workflows. So ultimately, it's up to the title on the slide is be creative. It's up to your own creativity on how you want your process to be defined. And we'll be flexible and give you the tools to make that happen. So next, we sort of alluded to this right at the beginning in step 1 when that alert landed in the ConnectWise Manage service board, and that's that we really want to make sure that we have inventory sync set up between Auvik and ConnectWise Manage. To have those configurations automatically populated by Auvik not only saves you a lot of time on the documentation, right? So I don't have to spend time going out and manually documenting any of that within Manage, but it also gives me an opportunity as I'm receiving tickets to get a whole bunch of context about that device, right? I'm now going to automatically link those alerts that come from Auvik, become that service board ticket attached to the configuration, just because I have that inventory sync set up, and now I have a ton more context as a user. I don't have to spend time digging for, oh, I got an alert on a switch. Well, which switch is it? What's the history of that device? It's all right there because Auvik and ConnectWise have already made that association.
Now, if I can jump in really quickly, Steve, something I want to make a note of that I'm finding actually partners aren't aware of this feature is I can bundle configurations together. So what bundling allows me to do is take 2 configs, one being managed by Auvik and another just more documentation, more informational. Again, it's more manually managed, but I can marry those together and bundle them. So again, that device is still going to be managed by Auvik, but if I have a configuration type for maybe a custom type where I want to add just some additional details about that device, maybe its location or just whatever it is that's important to me, using radio icons, drop-down menu fields, text input fields, so on and so forth. Again, bundling those two together really gives me all the information that's important to me about that particular device. And again, you're not limited to Auvik. You can use that bundling wherever you'd like, but it's just, again, a really, really great way to inch up the level of your documentation. And by the way, if you're using a tool like IT Boost or IT Glue, use those integrations as the source of truth across all those tools. Allow the integrations with Auvik and ConnectWise to move those devices into that into that kind of source of truth to have everything accessible across all of your team.
Awesome.
Now, I want to just add one more point here. Configurations in a way are so simple, but I love them. I mean, I use them on the pre-sale side to understand how we are documenting our calls. I would use them in the support side to understand subscriptions and pain points. So, you know, that's just how I use them here internally. We even use them in our demo lab too. So really fantastic tool. Geek out for them really hard, but to echo Steve's point, as alerts are being raised in Manage, that config record for that device is automatically tied to that ticket. Now, if you go to that configs tab, you'll see that information there, but all those details on the config tab is all pulling into a configuration analysis report, right? So that configuration analysis report is really, really handy because, again, all those alerts are being raised by Auvik. Those are being created as tickets. We're logging our time on those tickets. So again, we're putting that really great data into Manage, which means now I can get a really great report back that shows me, okay, across all these different network devices, how much time am I spending with them? And since there's a cost that's been assigned to my my type of work that I'm doing, my job, I can now accurately, as that service manager or business owner, I can accurately kind of check how much these devices are costing us. Are we spending more on them than we're actually getting? Right. So it's going to peel back that curtain a little bit for us and help to calculate all the time that we spent supporting on those devices.
Awesome, and I think we've talked a little bit on this already, but definitely, you know, a point we want to hammer home is on the workflow side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we talk about SOPs. We're talking about standardizing those procedures, those processes, how we're going to do that job. This is where, again, putting that good data in and building those routine processes are so important. Sure, the Wild West can be fun sometimes, but again, if we categorize a ticket, we can actually really help to develop repeatable processes, build consistency among teams, and help those teams of multiple individuals work together. Well, how do we make that work? Well, as I said before, when that alert gets raised in Auvik, I'm going to have my workflow rule either move it over, or I might just default that type on that ticket through the integration. But again, my type, subtype, and item allow me to organize that kind of work coming in so I can pull great reports on where our team is spending their time, the types of issues that we're seeing. But in relation to this conversation that we're having today, if this is a particular job that, again, we don't want to say how to use Auvik, but for an issue of a high CPU utilization, right? What are some steps that someone can take, right? We're talking about putting someone more of an L1 on that ticket versus maybe an L2 or L3, kind of free up some time for them while that L1 triages. I can take a ticket template, automatically have it assigned to that ticket because I've, in the past, kind of married the categorization of the ticket together with that template. And as you can see on the right-hand side there, I've got tasks automatically applying to that ticket now that I can check off as I complete them. I can jump into them and I can fill them out. If maybe we're working on a rollout, it's not big enough for a project, but a ticket will be perfect for that. I can even assign multiple users to each of those different tasks within a ticket. So again, Steve and Houston are working on a job. Houston decides at the last minute, hey, I'm going to go on vacation. Nothing I would ever do, right? But Steve now knows, okay, well, this is what Houston's done, or this is what Houston hasn't done. I can now easily understand that, and I don't have to go back to that customer and ask them, hey, what did we do so far? I don't have to do things again and waste more time. I can get right to the point and begin working on that. And if this is something that maybe came in with a high CPU utilization alert, and this is something that we're seeing more and more now, I can build knowledge base articles within ConnectWise Managed that now allow my team the ability to quickly search how issues have been resolved in the past. I can categorize those with subcategories as well, and I can make that available and even have an approval process, by the way. So, right, if Steve sees, okay, this is something that we're seeing time and time again, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to build a knowledge base article so Houston doesn't have to keep asking me how to fix this issue, and we'll approve that and we'll get it out the door. So again, some really great features by leveraging that integration as well as functionality already within the ticket.
Right. Yeah, I really like the idea of having these tasks built in and automatically assigned, as alerts come in, because it allows me to take, the documentation, whether it's asset documentation or process documentation. As IT professionals, we're not known for the best documentation. I don't think that's going to be a secret to anyone. And so to have to not only just do the documentation, then to go look for it. In this case, I don't have to look for it at all. It's right there in my face. And as soon as I get that ticket, whether I've been on the job for, a day or 10 years, I know exactly what I should be doing next. So the whole idea of building in these tasks, I think, is really good.
Hey, Steve, last thing I actually just thought of is in your perspective with how partners could be using Auvik for not necessarily reactive issues but proactive issues. Are there things that they could be doing that maybe if I have a routine ticket appear in someone's calendar or someone's ticket list that says, hey, use Auvik to check X, Y, and Z things here. Could that be something that they could leverage? And I'm sorry to put you on the spot there. We didn't rehearse this, guys. But I was just thinking maybe a routine ticket might be helpful that has those tasks of maybe your dailies or your weeklies or monthlies, things like that, to help kind of maintain the network there.
Yeah, so I'll do a shout out to, we've built a few standard operating procedures that are available via download link, and I think we'll include some of that information at the end of the sessions today. But one of those is basically how to leverage Auvik as part of your QBR, and I could apply a lot of those, whether it's a monthly or a quarterly or even a weekly type task that I do. But as an example, I would go through things like alert history to identify if there's any trending alerts. I go through the configuration backup screen to make sure that I have, although it's all automated, I will do that sort of double check. Hey, it's all there. So there's a few of those tasks that I can run through. A few of the TrafficInsights reports, so look through to see if there's any applications that are new to the network, things that I haven't put in a control. Like as an example, I like to pick on Dropbox a lot, and I probably shouldn't. In a lot of organizations, it becomes hey, we shouldn't be using that because we have another organizationally sanctioned file sharing application. So doing an audit for that on a regular basis. So I'll do a shout out to those SOPs that we do have in our, I believe they're in our partner portal. There's a lot of resources there that can help you build up. Well, what are these standard tasks that I should be leveraging Auvik for on whether it's a monthly or quarterly basis?
Yeah. So put that into a ticket template, almost a service template, ticket template, and put that on your L1 or your L2's boards. First of every other week. Use the inline images inside of the notes area to give actual screenshots for where to go and what to look for. So someone that may be as familiar with Auvik knows exactly what to do, and now they're getting that experience with Auvik and ensuring that your customers' networks are set up for success.
For sure. So we've covered a lot today. We sort of worked through, the whole idea of people, process, tools, and standard operating procedures. We talked about, the number of tools that you have in the stack. Focused in on Auvik and ConnectWise Manage a lot through the tips and tricks. So if you're sitting there going, hey, like this sounds great, but I don't know where to start. I would start with making sure that you take a lot of what we talked about for those integration tips and tricks on ConnectWise Manage and Auvik and really start to build those in. So whether it's the inventory sync or setting up some workflows around sending different ticket types to different service boards, that's really where I would start to make sure I'm getting the most out of that integration. And then as you start to mature that, we can then look at how do I start to integrate some of those dashboards between my RMM and Auvik. But definitely where I'd want to start is on the PSA Auvik side.
Definitely. And then, like I said, it's IT Nation Connect this week, so I'll be hanging around. I'll be popping into the Auvik booth to say hi. If anyone wants to sit down and set up a quick 30-minute with me, I'll be more than happy to help look at how we can build some of those efficiencies into workflows.